Hello and welcome Year 9 to this fourth lesson in the week beginning the 18th of January. And as with last week, you're going to have 3 lessons worth of Romeo and Juliet that I will narrate over to support you with your learning at home. And your first question is, why did Romeo and Juliet have to keep their love a secret? And you have a fantastic picture there from the Zeffirelli version, which I remember watching in my first year of sixth form with the 2 very young co-stars there meeting on the balcony for an illicit kiss. Well, the answer, of course, is that they both were from families who absolutely hated and despised each other. So the families would not have condoned their love, nor, of course, the idea of them getting married. As for the extension question, I was thinking of The Scarlet Letter and Jane Eyre, and quite a few novels came to mind in which a love has to be kept secret. But I wasn't so good at thinking about plays and poems. So very happy for you to email me if you've got suggestions there. Well, as we've said, the 2 lovers could not tell people about their love because their families were literally at war with one another. There was what we call a feud between the 2 families. And a feud is a serious, sometimes violent argument between 2 people or groups that can go on over a very long period of time, which is why we use this. It's not an argument, it's actually more serious than an argument. It's a long-standing hatred which can spill over into violence that can last over many, many years. So let's have a look at examples of feuding. So we've got a clip from Animal Farm. That's probably the Battle of the Cowshed with Mr. Jones being pecked at by the geese. And the feud between the animals and the humans led to many deaths, which we saw in the Battle of the Windmill. And then you've got a picture of a scrum in a football match, and it might just be a football match, but the rivalry between the 2 teams had the possibility to erupt into a violent feud. And another example, again a picture of Tybalt and Mercutio fighting from the Zeffirelli version. The city of Verona had not known peace since the feud broke out between the 2 families many generations ago. So as you can see, that is a key piece of vocabulary that we need you to remember for your work on Romeo and Juliet. Now, I always find it really helpful to put down who's who, and I always like to use different colours, and funnily enough, it's usually blue for the Montagues and it's usually red for the Capulets. And the feud in Verona is between 2 very wealthy and therefore very powerful and important families. And if you look on Show My Homework, you'll see there's a Word document that I've also saved as a PDF, which gives you a very clear guide to who belongs to the Blues and who belongs to the Reds. And so the feuding is going to have a marked effect on the rest of Verona. Okay, if we look again at this quotation from the prologue, there is mention of civil blood making civil hands unclean. What does this quotation tell the audience about the feud between the Montagues and the Capulets? Well, there's a lot of mention of blood being spilt and hands being unclean, as in covered in blood. So what that quotation tells us is that the feud is violent and bloody. People have died in the feud. The heads of the family hate each other intensely, and the feud has lasted for generations. It is long-standing, bitter and brutal. Now, if we were at school, you'd be using this version of Romeo and Juliet, and I'm not quite sure what the arrangement is. I've tried to upload the text for you. There was a bit of confusion with line lengths, but never mind. This is what your textbook would look like, and it's a scan of the opening Act 1 scene. And you'll notice that on the right-hand side, you've got the script, which is the part that the actors read. This bit on the left tells you who the characters are and which characters are speaking. Your stage directions are always written in italics and they tell you where you are and what is happening in the scene. So we've got enter Samson and Gregory with swords and bucklers. Now, to make finding a line easy, we have line numbers, which you can see on the right-hand side, and they help you to find a quotation quickly. And on the left-hand side of your book, you always get a summary on the top left of the page, which is jolly useful if you're trying to trace what happens in scene to scene and act to act. This section of the text shows you the glossary, which gives you some of the harder words like bucklers we read are small round shields that can be carried on the arm to protect the servant when sword fighting. And it's helpful to have some of the words to explain what the script is telling us. Now we're going to start at the beginning in Act 1, Scene 1, and we're going to realise just how violent this feud is between the two families. And the play opens with some members of the Capulet family spotting some members of the Montague family. So we're going to read from the line, "Draw thy tool," to "Look upon thy death." So here we have the opening scene. We're in Verona, in a public place, in the streets, and here we have two of the servants from the Capulet household, Gregory and Samson, and in comes a member of the Montague household, Abram, with another servant. Gregory says, "Draw thy tool, sword, here comes of the house of Montagues. My naked weapon is out, quarrel, I will back thee. How? Turn thy back and run. Fear me not. No, marry, I fear thee. Let us take the law of our sides, let them begin. I will frown as I pass by, and let them take it as they wish. Nay, as they dare, I will bite my thumb at them, which is a disgrace to them if they bear it." And so he bites his thumb, which is a very rude insult. And Abram, of course, reacts, "Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?" "I do bite my thumb, sir." "Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?" "Is the law of our side if I say I?" "No. No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir." "Do you quarrel, sir?" "Quarrel, sir? No, sir. But if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you, no better. Well, sir." And in comes Benvolio, a good friend of Romeo's. "Say better. Here comes one of my master's kinsmen." "Part, fools," drawing his sword. "Put up your swords, you know not what you do." And then in comes Tybalt, who's one of the Capulets, drawing his sword. "What? Art thou drawn amongst these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death." So we have a very dramatic opening scene with members of the Montague and the Capulet household getting drawn into violence very, very quickly. And I'm afraid sword fighting and brawling in the streets was very commonplace. It was very much accepted in Shakespeare's time, and it was often one way of sorting out a quarrel or a feud. So, of course, with all this talk of drawn swords and weapons, of course, this is bloody, this is violent, and of course it can lead to tragedy. Now, I appreciate you're working at your home, so let's have a look at the questions that are below. What does Samson mean when he says, "Let us take the law of our sides, let them begin"? And what do Samson and Gregory actually do to provoke Abram into fighting with them? And finally, we've met 5 characters in the scene. Who are they, and what family is each character a member of? So you may want to stop the video at this point and go back a few slides and see if you can work out who is who. And it may help you to look at that A4 plan of who's who, which is also on Show My Homework. So the answers are: Samson knows he will get into trouble if he starts the fight. So he tries to make Abram start the fight with him and Gregory. And as you can see, Samson there is biting his thumb, which was the equivalent of putting two fingers up, I suppose, in those days. It was deemed an insult. And so Samson and Gregory, there's your answer to question number 2, provoke Abram biting their thumbs at him. And so on the Capulet side, we have Gregory and Samson, we have Tybalt, who is Juliet's cousin, and on the Montague side, the blue side, we have Benvolio and Abram. Now, more and more people from the Montagues and Capulets joined the fight, and I wanted to try and show you the opening from the Zeffirelli version, but I couldn't access this on YouTube. So I did find a rather delightful little clip, which was made by a Year 8 student for homework, and I think you'll love it because it's a Lego clip. So if you'd like to log on to the YouTube address, you can watch that. And then there is a wonderful, very dramatic piece of music by Prokofiev, who wrote Romeo and Juliet for the ballet, and this particular section is the fight between the Capulets and the Montagues, and it's absolutely fascinating to watch each section of the orchestra. The violins are incredibly measured, and you can see them literally going up and up and up the range as they shriek higher and higher, and the brass section are bellowing. So there are 2 clips for you to listen to and to watch, to imagine the violence and the drama of this fight at the opening of the play. And what a spectacular way to open Romeo and Juliet for the audience. Now here we're going to meet Prince Aeschylus. Now there are a variety of spellings in this PowerPoint, but I'm familiar with the traditional spelling, which is Escalus. Now he is the ruler of the city-state of Verona, Italy, and it is his job to keep the peace. And you will, of course, perhaps have learnt more about city-states in Year 8, where Italy was divided into many states, and each of them had a ruler. So Venice would have had its own city-state, Verona, Naples, and so on. And usually there is a lord or a duke or a prince whose job it is to manage those city-states. Now, Prince Aeschylus is not a member of either the Montague or the Capulet family, so he is in charge, he should be unbiased, and because he rules Verona, the families must obey his commands. Now, only the prince can stop the fighting in the street, and he is the only person the families will listen to, which shows just how severe and serious the feud is between the 2 families. Now, whatever version you're following from, we're going to look at the long speech that Prince Aeschylus gives to the warring factions of the families, and I've put it up onto the slide for you so that you have it below. So here comes Prince Aeschylus with his train. Rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbour-stained steel. Will they not hear? What, ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins, on pain of torture. From those bloody hands throw your mistempered weapons to the ground, and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word, by thee, old Capulet and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans in hands as old, cankered with peace to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me, and Montague, come you this afternoon to know our further pleasure in this case, to Old Freetown, our common judgment place. Once more, on pain of death, all men depart. And you can see there's a stage direction to show that all but Lord and Lady Montague and Benvolio exit. Now, the writing, of course, there are going to be lots of words that you won't be familiar with, but hopefully you can glean the sense that the prince is pretty angry And he's saying 3 times, there have been 3 times, 3 lots of quarrels that have disturbed Verona's streets, and it's had the effect on making the older citizens in Verona actually take up their weapons to wield old partisans in hands as old. So even the old people are getting involved in the feuding, and they're picking their side to fight upon. And he says quite clearly to the warring factions, if you ever disturb the peace of the Verona streets again, your lives will be forfeit. In other words, you will pay for the violence and the feuding by losing your life. And then he gives obviously instructions to the head of each household to come and meet with him later on. Now, you need a pen and paper, and you need to write your answer down to this question. How do the citizens of Verona feel about the feud between the Montagues and the Capulets? And remember, we've got this line, clubs, bills and partisans, strike, beat them down. Down with the Capulets, down with the Montagues. So everyone's getting involved in the fight. Everybody's snatching a weapon or drawing their sword or pulling out an old buckler shield, and they're getting stuck into the fight, opting for the blues or the red side. Now have a look at this section of the prince's speech here. What 3 phrases does the prince use to show how bloody the fight has been? And you can pause the video at this point to look for the answer. And you'll notice, of course, the first word he's using is rebellious subjects, because people are misbehaving. But I was drawn to this phrase, neighbour stained steel. One neighbour is drawing a blood-stained sword against another neighbour. So neighbour stained steel. And we've also got this very, very vivid image of purple fountains. So the blood is literally gushing forth from severed arteries. And he also refers to the phrase bloody hands. So we get a very clear picture. The audience will realise that this is a fight to the death, and it's pretty serious. And what is the punishment that the fighters will receive in the future, and why? And you can see that I've highlighted the last 2 lines, which will give you the answer to your question. If either the Montagues or the Capulets disturb the peace of the streets in future, they will pay for this with their lives. Now, you might want to compare your writing to some possible answers here, and it's also good to check that when you're quoting, you've put quotes into apostrophes, and also that you've used complete sentences with capital letters for proper nouns for the Prince, the Montagues and the Capulets. I don't think I need to read those through, but you might want to read these through yourself and compare them to the answers you've jotted down at home. Do you want to review your answers at all? Maybe check that your quotations are in speech marks, check that your proper nouns, your names and titles are, whether it's of a place, Verona, or the families, Montagues, Capulets, or the Prince, have capital letters. Now we can see in Act 1, Scene 1 that different characters have different attitudes to the feud in Verona, and I'd like you to think about how each of these characters feels about the feud. So let's start with Tybalt. Tybalt is famed for his prowess as a swordsman. He's a very skilled fighter, and in fact he has a nickname, which is the Prince of Cats. So if anyone's keen to fight, it's going to be Tybalt. And he arrives in the melee and he says, "What? Are you drawn? Is your sword drawn amongst these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death." So there's a threat, if there ever was one. And Benvolio says, "Look, I'm just trying to keep the peace. Put up your sword or use your sword to part these men with me." So Benvolio on the blue side is trying to keep the peace. "What?" says Tybalt, "you've got your sword drawn and you talk of peace. I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues, and thee. Have at thee, coward. And of course they get embroiled. So you may find that Tybalt is ready for a fight and prepared to kill any Montagues immediately. Turn, Benvolio, and look upon thy death. He's not interested in resolving the feud peacefully. Talk of peace? I hate the word. So Tybalt is a fighter. Let's go back. I want to tell you now the prince. What does the prince think? We've seen some of his speech when he's calling his subjects rebellious and enemies of peace, who keep on blaspheming, as it were, with their swords being covered in blood. Will they not hear? Why won't they listen to him? He is the ruler of Verona. He has the power. And 3 times we've had feuding, which has spilt out into the streets, causing the older citizens to muck in and get involved. So we can see that the prince hates that the feud spills so much blood. He doesn't like the disruption it brings to the normal people of the city, who actually have got nothing to do with the 2 families feuding or disagreement. And finally, we've got Capulet, Lord Capulet, Juliet's father, who says, "What noise is this? Give me my long sword, ho!" And his wife says, a crutch would be more appropriate. Why do you call for a sword? And then in comes old Montague and his wife. "My sword, I say." Old Montague is come and flourishes his blade in spite of me. So you can see how riled up Montague's getting and how much he wants to fight. And so here, like Tybalt, Lord Capulet is ready for a fight and immediately asks for his long sword. Now, I've seen swords up in Edinburgh armouries that are sort of 5 feet in length and extraordinary, almost as tall as a person. And you have to think of the immense strength it would take to wield one of these swords. Now, as the head of the Capulet family, he obviously doesn't want to show anyone he's peaceful and forgiving, and his repeated demand for my sword shows that he intends to lead by violent example. Okay, write down your answers to this question, ignoring the beep of my phone. How would you describe the feud between the Montagues and the Capulets in the opening scene of Romeo and Juliet? And this is where you might want to write quite an involved answer, so you can pause the PowerPoint and write your answer down. And so we come to the end of lesson 1. Which statement about the feud in Verona is correct? Is it A? It's clear why the Montagues and the Capulets are in a feud with each other. Is it? B, the prince and the heads of the 2 families want to make a peaceful truce. C, Tybalt kills Benvolio in the fight. D, Gregory and Samson make rude gestures to make the Montagues start a fight with them. Or E, the prince says that anyone caught fighting in the future will be punishable by death. And it looks to me that there are 2 statements there that are correct. So you're looking for 2 statements. Which will they be? And of course you can find the answers on the next slide. And hopefully you got D and E correct. There is no way that the families want to make a peace. Benvolio is not killed. He will reappear in Act 3, so he's most certainly not killed. And we don't know what the reason for the feuding is. In fact, it's never explained in the play. Or it's enough to know that the Montagues and the Capulets hate each other to the death. Now, you don't need to hand any work in at all from lesson 1 today. All right, I will make it very clear on the PowerPoint which work you need to hand in at the end of the week. So that's the end of lesson 1.